All right, guys, on this week's Land Beat, we're talking about thermal refuge. Well, that's south slopes, north slopes, and drainages, what their role is on a recreational property, and how to manage them. We're getting into the weeds here when it comes to timber management, but this is very important and shouldn't be overlooked in the consideration of where you do what practices and to what degree you do those practices. It's early June, late May time frame, and we're getting ready to go into the summertime. Obviously, deer aren't sweating. So what they do to cool their bodies down is they get in the shade, an area that's got breeze that's blowing through it, to regulate their bodies with the outside temperature, right? So we need to keep that in consideration if we're trying to maximize comfort levels, stress levels on a property. So we need to have some areas that are shaded. So that's what we're standing in today. This is a drainage that is on this property, and we have not done extensive TSI work in this to open up the canopy that would allow some sunlight in, but being on it's a drainage, and the way the sun's moving across and this aspect of the drainage, we wouldn't get a lot of sunlight in anyway. So it doesn't make sense to go in there and be super aggressive with TSI. Let's let it offer what it naturally would offer, a more shaded environment that is going to be a great place in the next few months for bachelor groups or does with fawns to go and hide in, feel secure in, because there's still some cover, some understory in the summer time frame. But the cooler aspect of this, sometimes it could be 10, 12, 15 degrees cooler in sections like this than it is outside in areas of full sun where you might be feeling it's 95 plus out. That little bit of temperature difference goes a long ways, and it's important to manage for that, knowing that summer and late summer is a stress period in a lot of regions across the country where whitetails reside or where you may be owning a property. So keeping that in consideration, we have to have portions of the property that do offer that. And that can look different across the country for sure, but one of those similar things is it's either an area that is not going to receive a lot of sun based on its slope aspect, or we keep more canopy intact and don't open it up as much. That also then is going to help the shade component. One thing, if you are going to manage the canopy in those types of stands, try to address the mid-story in those areas. That is going to help a breeze blow through that stand a little bit better, and it's going to put a little bit more maybe structure on the ground or allow some stump sprouts to happen by addressing those mid-story trees if you're not using herbicide. But when you keep the overstory, you still are blocking a lot of sun, and then dressing the mid-story is going to help that breeze aspect continue to blow through there, keep temperatures down, and make a really good place for the summertime frame for deer to seek that type of thermal refuge that they're looking for. Now, on the contrary, we need to go talk about what is not managed for summertime thermal aspects. We need to talk about the fall and winter and how we're managing for those thermal aspects on a completely different portion of the property. We need to find the balance of this climate on this region of how many acres roughly, there's no certain percentage here, but roughly should be kind of a summertime thermal refuge versus wintertime thermal refuge. A lot of slope aspect topography plays into that and creek drainages, but let's find a rough percentage here and talk about how we're doing that here on this property in Ohio. All right, guys, we're on the flip side of the farm, south-facing slopes. Those other areas that are summertime thermal, generally northeast-facing slopes and some steeper drainages where the sun's not shining, but here, we've got areas that are going to receive a lot of sunlight, right? So that means that deer likely aren't going to be here bedded during the summer time frame because of the increased temperatures on this slope. Now that is important because it grows an immense amount of vegetation, right? Offering lots of forage, so that doesn't mean they're not going to be here, period. They just might not be bedded during daylight hours on this slope. But in the winter time frame, when they need that sunlight's energy to warm up their bodies to stay warmer, where they have to use less energy to stay warm, this is where they're going to be at. And because we have open canopy and transitioning sunlight into plants that are going to increase growth of those plants, we've got cover that they can bed in during that fall and winter time frame when they need to be on these slopes. So you can see very easily, this has had a pretty intense amount of timber stand improvement over time. And we've got a lot of sunlight coming into the stand. We've got a lot of woody sprouts, stump sprouts, herbaceous vegetation coming into this unit, down tree tops, and a lot of structure to support this vegetation. This is a prime example of a south-facing slope intensively managed that's going to increase forage throughout the growing season, but also provide that thermal refuge in the winter time frame. Having these in close proximity to food plots is wonderful. Just up over top of this ridge, on the north side of the slope is a food plot, and we enter in from the northwest and hunt this on the southeast. So literally deer are bedded on this slope above an old field, or they're in the old field, transition through this, or they're bedded here and literally just go 80, 90 yards across over top of this ridge right into the food plot. We've come in from a completely different way. Deer never know you're there. It's a great setup. So try and work the slope aspects. Consider the thermal opportunities you need to have on your property to create hunting setups that are dynamite just like this.